Hollywood's golden age looked perfect on the surface. Glamour, luxury, flashing cameras, and stars who seemed larger than life. But behind the studio lights, some of Hollywood's most iconic women were hiding secrets that could have destroyed everything they built. They changed their names, protected forbidden relationships, and lived double lives in an industry obsessed with control. Tonight, we're uncovering the hidden stories of 7 legendary women who refused to let Hollywood define who they truly were. Number 1. Greta Garbo. Before Hollywood turned her into a legend, Greta Garbo was just a quiet young woman from Stockholm trying to escape poverty. Born as Greta Lovisa Gustafsson, she grew up in a cramped apartment with very little money and a future that seemed painfully limited. But everything changed when her striking beauty and mysterious personality caught the attention of filmmakers in Sweden. By the mid-1920s, Hollywood studios were fighting to bring her to America, convinced they had discovered someone unlike anyone audiences had ever seen before. The moment Garbo appeared on screen, people became obsessed. She didn't smile like other actresses. She didn't flirt with reporters or attend endless Hollywood parties. There was something distant about her, something cold yet magnetic that made audiences unable to look away. MGM carefully crafted her image as the Swedish Sphinx, a woman too mysterious for ordinary romance. But behind that carefully controlled image was a private life the studios desperately wanted hidden. Throughout her career, Garbo formed intense emotional relationships with several women, including writer Mercedes de Acosta. Their connection became one of Hollywood's worst-kept secrets. Letters between them revealed deep affection and emotional intimacy that went far beyond friendship. But in the 1930s, even rumors like these could destroy a star overnight. Studios created fake stories linking Garbo to male co-stars. Hoping to silence whispers spreading through Hollywood circles, unlike many actresses of her era, Garbo refused to fully surrender to the system. She hated publicity, avoided interviews, and rarely allowed reporters into her private life. The more mysterious she became, the more audiences wanted her. Yet fame came with a heavy price. Every appearance was controlled, every friendship monitored, every rumor treated like a threat to the studio's profits. Then, at the peak of her fame, Garbo shocked the world. Number 2. Barbara Stanwyck. Long before she became one of Hollywood's toughest and most respected actresses, Barbara Stanwyck was a little girl named Ruby Stevens growing up in Brooklyn surrounded by tragedy. Her mother died when she was only 4 years old after being pushed from a moving streetcar, and soon after, her father disappeared completely. Orphaned and shuffled between foster homes, Ruby learned very early that survival meant becoming stronger than everyone around her. That hard childhood would later shape the fearless personality audiences saw on screen. As a teenager, she worked exhausting jobs before joining the chorus line in New York. Broadway producers quickly noticed her sharp presence and natural confidence. By the late 1920s, Hollywood studios came calling, but they wanted more than her talent. They wanted a new identity. Ruby Stevens became Barbara Stanwyck, a polished star carefully rebuilt for the screen. Behind the glamour, however, she remained deeply guarded, trusting very few people in an industry built on manipulation. Stanwyck's rise to fame was explosive. Films like Double Indemnity and Stella Dallas proved she could play vulnerable, emotional women just as convincingly as cold, dangerous femme fatale. Directors admired her professionalism because she never caused trouble on set and always delivered powerful performances. But the control she maintained in public masked a private life filled with loneliness and carefully hidden relationships. Hollywood gossip columns often linked her to famous men, but many insiders believed her deepest emotional connections were with women. One of the closest people in her life was actress and publicist Helen Ferguson, who remained by Stanwyck's side for decades. Their bond became a quiet but constant presence behind the scenes. In an era where even rumors could ruin careers, discretion became essential for survival. Her marriages also fueled speculation. Number 3. Tallulah Bankhead. In a time when most Hollywood stars carefully protected their reputations, Tallulah Bankhead seemed almost determined to destroy hers. Loud, rebellious, unpredictable, and impossible to control, she became one of the most scandalous women of her era. But behind the wild parties and shocking headlines was a fearless actress who refused to live by Hollywood's rules, even when it damaged her career. Born into a powerful political family in Alabama, Tallulah grew up surrounded by wealth and influence. Her father was a congressman, and her family expected her to become a proper Southern lady. Instead, she became fascinated with theater and chased fame with reckless determination. By her teenage years, she had already developed the sharp tongue and fearless confidence that would later make her legendary. When she moved to New York and later London, audiences were immediately captivated. Tallulah had a smoky voice, magnetic beauty, and an energy that made every room feel dangerous. On stage, she became a sensation, especially in Britain where her rebellious personality felt exciting instead of scandalous. But her private life quickly became the subject of endless rumors. Unlike many stars who hid their relationships, Tallulah barely tried to conceal hers. She openly flirted with both men and women, attended outrageous parties, and surrounded herself with artists, actresses, and writers who lived outside society's expectations. Hollywood executives were horrified. In the 1930s and 40s, even whispers about same-sex relationships could end a career. Tallulah's refusal to act ashamed made her even more controversial. To calm public gossip, she married actor John Emery in 1937. But few people believed the marriage was truly romantic. Behind the scenes, Tallulah continued living life exactly as she pleased, ignoring studio warnings and social expectations. That independence came with consequences. Number 4. Joan Crawford. Before she became one of the most powerful women in Hollywood, Joan Crawford was a struggling young dancer named Lucille LeSueur trying to escape poverty and humiliation. Her childhood was unstable, filled with financial hardship and family problems that left her desperate to reinvent herself. Hollywood offered that chance, but only if she transformed completely. Studios changed her name, polished her image, and turned her into the glamorous star audiences would eventually worship. By the 1930s, Crawford had become one of MGM's biggest attractions. She represented ambition, beauty, and sophistication at a time when millions of Americans were struggling through the Great Depression. Women copied her fashion, men admired her confidence, and studios carefully marketed her as the perfect example of Hollywood glamour. But behind the expensive gowns and dazzling smile was a woman constantly fighting to protect her position in an unforgiving industry. Crawford's personal life became almost as famous as her films. She married several high-profile men, including actor Frank Attone, but many relationships seemed emotionally distant and filled with tension. Hollywood gossip circles constantly whispered about Crawford's private connections with women, especially actresses and female companions who remained unusually close to her throughout her career. Like many stars of the era, maintaining the illusion of heterosexual romance was considered essential for survival. What made Crawford different was her relentless determination. She treated fame like a battlefield. Every interview, every appearance, every role was carefully calculated to protect her image. Friends often described her as disciplined to an extreme level, obsessed with control because she knew how quickly Hollywood could destroy a woman once audiences lost interest. Her rivalry with Bette Davis became legendary. Number 5. Marlene Dietrich. Long before Hollywood embraced bold and unconventional women, Marlene Dietrich was already breaking every rule. With her sharp cheekbones, hypnotic voice, and fearless confidence, she became one of the most mysterious and seductive stars of the 20th century. But what truly made Dietrich dangerous wasn't just her beauty. It was the fact that she refused to let society decide how a woman should behave, dress, or love. Born in Berlin in 1901, Dietrich grew up in a strict middle-class German family where discipline mattered more than dreams. She originally studied violin and hoped to become a musician, but after an injury ended that path, she turned toward acting in cabaret performance. Berlin in the 1920s was wild, artistic, and filled with underground nightlife that exposed her to a world far more open than anything Hollywood would later allow. Her breakthrough came with the film The Blue Angel, where audiences became obsessed with her smoky voice and magnetic screen presence. Hollywood studios immediately saw international star potential and brought her to America. Once she arrived, Paramount carefully built her image as the ultimate femme fatale, glamorous, untouchable, and dangerously seductive. But even the studios struggled to control her. Dietrich became famous not only for her acting but for openly challenging gender expectations. She wore tuxedos at public events, posed in men's suits, and blurred the line between masculine and feminine at a time when such behavior shocked audiences. In several films, she even kissed women on screen or performed with obvious queer undertones, something almost unheard of during Hollywood's strict censorship era. Rumors about her relationships followed her constantly. She had romances with famous men, including actors and writers, but many close friends and insiders also spoke about her deep attraction to women. Number 6. Alla Nazimova. Before Hollywood became the center of the entertainment world, Alla Nazimova was already one of the most fascinating and controversial women in show business. Elegant, intelligent, and fiercely independent, she built an empire during the silent film era while secretly creating a hidden space for people who could never safely live openly in public. Decades before Hollywood even acknowledged queer culture existed, Nazimova was quietly shaping it behind the scenes. Born in the Russian Empire, in what is now Ukraine, Nazimova came from a troubled Jewish family marked by conflict and instability. Her childhood was harsh, and by a young age she escaped into theater, where she discovered a talent powerful enough to transform her life. After becoming a respected stage actress in Europe, she immigrated to America in the early 1900s with little money and limited English. Yet audiences were instantly captivated by her dramatic presence and emotional intensity. By the 1910s and 1920s, Nazimova had become one of the highest-paid actresses in Hollywood. Unlike many women in the industry, she demanded creative control over her projects and refused to let studios fully dictate her career. She produced ambitious films with bold artistic styles that felt years ahead of their time. But it wasn't only her work that made her legendary. It was the secret world she built away from the cameras. Nazimova's mansion on Sunset Boulevard became famous as the Garden of Allah, a gathering place for artists, actors, writers, and members of Hollywood's hidden queer community. In an era when same-sex relationships could destroy careers overnight, her home offered rare freedom and safety. Whispered stories about glamorous parties and private romances spread through Hollywood for years. She was also connected romantically to several women, including writer Mercedes de Acosta, whose relationships with famous actresses became one of old Hollywood's biggest secrets. Number 7. Judith Anderson. Before Hollywood fully understood her power, Judith Anderson had already built a reputation as one of the most commanding stage actresses of her generation. With her intense voice, piercing presence, and ability to dominate every scene she entered, she became unforgettable to audiences who saw her perform. But behind the controlled elegance and theatrical authority was a deeply private life that she carefully protected from public view. Born in Adelaide, Australia, Anderson came from a modest family with mixed European and Jewish roots, though she rarely spoke about her background publicly. From a young age, she showed a fascination with performance, eventually leaving home to pursue acting. The stage became her world, and by the time she moved to the United States, she had already developed the powerful acting style that would define her entire career. Hollywood discovered Anderson not as a conventional beauty, but as a force of nature. She was not the soft romantic lead studios usually promoted, but instead someone who brought depth, mystery, and emotional intensity to every role. Her most famous performance came as Mrs. Danvers in Alfred Hitchcock's Rebecca, where she played a chilling, obsessive housekeeper whose devotion to her late mistress became one of cinema's most iconic portrayals of psychological tension. The role was groundbreaking because it carried strong emotional undertones that modern viewers often interpret as queer-coded obsession, something rarely acknowledged openly in 1940s Hollywood. Anderson's performance blurred the line between loyalty, love, and fixation, creating a character that felt both terrifying and deeply human. In her personal life, Anderson lived quietly and avoided publicity whenever possible. She had 2 marriages, but both were short-lived and often described as more formal arrangements than deeply emotional partnerships.